All right, so let's talk about why we never ask questions about the parents. You ever notice that whenever conversations come up about like childhood and how the kids are doing nowadays, it's always like, oh, what's wrong with the kids, and never what's wrong with the parents. Well, that's what we're talking about for this Why Wednesday. Hit the theme song!
Presenting your host, Cuddy Vibe.
Wow! Woo! Very cool. Very cool theme song. I love your theme song, Odd But Fair. Odd But Fair was the creator of that theme song. I never really gave lip service to it, and I'm making sure that I try to do it throughout at least this Saturday and this Wednesday video. Hopefully I'll do it again on the Thursday video, but, you know, who knows. Anyway, throughout the past couple of weeks, YouTuber journalists by the name of Taylor Lorenz, who also, I believe, works with Wired pretty regularly, has been doing a series on internet security laws. Particularly, her series centers around Section 230 and the KOSA Act. So the KOSA is the Keep Kids Off Social Media Act. That's what they're trying to do. And basically, both of these initiatives are meant to basically impose digital ID restrictions onto websites, which would require all American citizens to register, basically every time that they go online with their ID, their state ID, which would completely kind of destroy anonymity on the internet. And it's a very these are very scary kind of legislative decisions that our Congress is toying with right now that are very concerning. But one of the things that I found interesting about the sort of conversation around these acts and these laws are the fact that we want to make sure that we protect the kids, right? And then people who are on the side of, these laws, keeping kids off social media, which, by the way, while we're on the topic, I don't know if you guys have noticed, but there are restrictions on Instagram, right? I think most social media apps, I remember when I was 13, and I signed up for social media apps, a lot of these apps don't really let you have a profile until you're older than 13. Obviously, like, there are ways to work around this, and by and large that happens with the permission of parents. You know what I mean? At least that, for me, that was what happened when I joined Instagram and Facebook and all that other stuff. But what's interesting is the fact that people don't even talk about the fact that there are already some limitations on the kind of access that children have to the internet. And also, by and large, like, that, access is really dependent on parents, right? Which is kind of what we're going to explore more after I sort of introduce this next idea, is the concept that social media is mentally, kind of creating instability in the lives of American children, which I don't really think is fair as an assumption, right? Because look at the rest of America. Do we look like we're okay? Right? I think a lot of people are very quick to scapegoat social media companies, and I think that for a lot of people, these legislative ideas are probably going to appeal to some people because they'll see it as, us defending ourselves against the interest of big tech. But that's just not the situation here. we'd be allowing big tech to access more of our data. We'd be allowing big tech to constantly surveil every single website we go onto for how long. And all of this stuff could be resold to the government or AI platforms for, training purposes. And at the end of the day, it's like, are we really going to create these conditions just because a couple of people said, like, assumed, in a very erroneous way that social media is sort of the fundamental root of our problems as a society, right? It's ridiculous. And again, part of this is able to function and prosper in society because of the way that we allow ourselves to assume that social media is responsible for the declining mental health of our children, right? And I find it really interesting because there's this notion of like protecting children throughout history that has oftentimes sort of backfired, right? I remember when I was growing up, there was that the participation trophies were a huge thing that people did in order to kind of protect children in some way that doesn't really make any sense. And I always just find it, really confusing. It's like, in this case in particular for social media, are we going to ask what's wrong with the parents at all? Are we going to, at all lay any blame or, even just question the actual state of what parenthood looks like? From what I understand, our relationship with labor is deteriorating more and more each year. I think people are, working longer. I think people are getting paid less. And I think that for parents, this ends up creating childcare is costing more. I think this by and large creates a situation where parents are sort of more beholden to corporate, masters or their employers than they necessarily are the family unit, for instance. And, it's always just like really weird to me how we can justify doing this thing or that thing to protect the kids, but at the end of the day, no one's talking about making life easier for parents, right? No one's talking about making it so that parents don't have to work so much every week. No one's talking about making sure that, aside from Zoran Mamdani, absolute king, making childcare, something that the state actually helps with. And at the end of the day, in my opinion, if we really want to protect kids like we claim that we do, maybe one of our best first steps to look into is actually the way that we talk about parenting and the way that we think about parenting. Because I think that there just have been like sort of a number of trends with parenting throughout the beginning of the 21st century that are creating a lot of these problems, right? Because I also find it really interesting, a lot of the people who are older, maybe, who will pretend to care about, the sanctity of their kids' safety or security or whatever on the internet are also potentially the kind of parents who, when their kid was upset as like a little baby or toddler and they were crying, they might have just given the kid an iPad, right? Like, I think we need to really, really think about the way we talk about childhood, in the sense that we make childhood so dependent on the society around the children. We make childhood so dependent on, the actual kids. We make, this, like, we create threats that don't really exist. And all the while, we never really take the time to stop and have an honest conversation about parenting. Because I guarantee, like my mom, for instance, was somebody who worked at a law firm who, if she wasn't, intentionally going out of her way to kind of create the conditions to raise me, like, I wouldn't have seen her when I got off the bus every day. She created that condition. And I think for those of you watching out there who are concerned about your kids and like any of the online stuff, like, just keep an open dialogue with your children. Talk to them about what they see online. Talk to them about their education, and even if it makes it, a kind of uncomfortable situation at your workplace, if you need the time and your workplace isn't affording it to you, you have to have that conversation so that your kids can have a functional parent as they grow up. I think that that's one of the most important things that we can really offer children, and I think a lot of the ideas about sort of surrounding the American family right now are very, very speculative, superstitious, and weak. So thanks for watching today's Why Wednesday. Like and subscribe. 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 Maybe comment.